From a secret underground bunker somewhere in the Arizona desert, 40 feet below the Earth's surface, two men, aided by their robotic artificial intelligence, Jennifer,
At your service.
hide from their wives and kids to discuss man stuff with interesting and unusual people. These men are the Bunker Boys. We are the Bunker Boys,
Yes,
back in the
we
bunker
are.
after a couple of weeks off.
Thank goodness.
We had so many things going on. So it was that time of year, you know, things get busy and you have to get things done. Because somehow this isn't the most important thing in our lives. It should be, but it isn't. But here we are, back on the saddle again.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
Something smart, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
But that's okay.
Likewise, I'm sure.
Likewise, I'm sure.
Back to you, Arthel.
This just in. Okay.
Oh.
Sondra Louise Smith passed away over the last week.
Who's up?
Well, that was her real given name at birth. Sondra Locke was her stage name. You remember Sondra Locke? Mm-mm. She was Clint Eastwood's girlfriend for a long time.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And then they split up back in, I think that was 89 or something.
I never knew that.
Yeah. She's a redhead. She looked very young for her age. In fact, she started her career off playing a 14-year-old when she was 20.
Wow.
People didn't know that she wasn't 14. They just thought she was a very gifted actress. But then she had to tell them later. They were signing a contract on her first acting role, and he said, well, we need your mother to sign. She goes, no, you don't. I'm 20 years old.
I'm old enough.
Yeah. But, she passed away at 74. Complications from cancer. I guess her heart gave out, but she had breast cancer, and then ended up, it spread to her bones, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
I hate cancer.
So do I.
It's one of those horrible diseases. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Well, maybe my worst enemy, but not.
You're terrible.
I know.
I know who I'd wish it on. No, never mind.
We won't get into that.
We won't.
No.
That's terrible.
But, it's just horrible. And people waste away, and it's slow. And, well, usually it's slow, but it can be fast and nasty. Her first film was Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And she went on from there to end up with Clint Eastwood in The Outlaw Josie Wales. You remember that movie?
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of who she was in that movie.
It's been so long since I've seen it, I can't remember myself. But anyway, we didn't introduce ourselves.
Oh, he's Chris and I'm Garth. Go ahead.
Okay, Chris. I'm Chris. He's Garth.
That's what I just
he's
said.
Garth and I'm Chris.
Right.
And if in case this is the first time you're listening, you need to know that, I guess. If you're a bill collector, he's Chris and I'm Garth.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's the other way around. But yes, born in Shelbyville, Tennessee, ended up in Every Which Way But Loose. She was the girl romantic interest, I guess you would call her, in Every Which Way But Loose. She was the little country singer in the bar. And Any Which Way You Can she was in. And Sudden Impact. She was in that too. But good actress. But I guess Clint and she had a little tiff.
Probably they probably met on the first movie.
Yeah, I think it was Outlaw Josie Wales.
Yeah, Outlaw Josie Wales.
Yeah, and then she...
Oh, okay. I was thinking of Pale Rider.
She's kind of got a reddish hair color. It's kind of auburn,
right,
between blonde and red. And Francis, his current girlfriend or wife, I don't know what she is now, Francis something, she's got red hair. So he must have a thing for redheads. I guess so.
Now this Sandra gal, was she the one who fell in love with them when they got the ranch with the grandma and everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boy, she was young back then.
Yeah, she was. She always looked younger than her age. And even at 74, just before she passed away, if you look online at her pictures, she looks real young.
Oh, be darned.
She looks good, well preserved.
Well, bless her soul.
Yeah, it's sad. I don't care who you are. That's just sad. Her last film was back in 2017. It was called Ray Meets Helen. And then she helped produce one called Rat Boy.
Ooh.
I don't have a clue what that was.
Yeah, me either.
And for some
Never
reason,
even heard of it.
my mic's making noise now.
Somebody sending us Morse code.
That's what it sounds like. Hopefully that'll pass.
Oh,
But
I got something that'll pass.
yeah, I'm afraid of that fact. Thank you very much. Well, Clint is 88 years old.
He just made a new movie.
He did. Do you know what it's called?
Mule.
The Mule. And you know what it's about?
A mule.
A mule. No.
About a drug runner or something like that.
Yeah, that's what they call people who run drugs across the border because they're like pack mules. They carry the product with them.
Right.
But he's got a big hit. I guess he's playing a grandpa that's
He's got a big head. What did you say?
big hit.
Oh, big hit.
He's got a big hit on his hands. Well,
Yeah, this guy's supposed to be 90. He's
portraying?
Yeah.
Or pretending to be?
Either or.
You mix those two up and you get portrend. But yeah, interesting stuff. I don't know. I hope to see that movie. It looks good. It looks like an interesting show. You like when I get lost, don't you?
Because I try and follow you there.
It's like, what is he talking about? No, I'm going to edit that part out. They're not going to know what we're talking about. But anyway, I thought we would talk today about some real interesting stuff.
Okay, let's rock. Let's rock this show.
So I thought we'd talk about some spooky stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, it's more interesting than spooky, but if it happened to you, it would be spooky.
If it happened to me.
You know, you shouldn't have left the nightclub, honest.
I know.
It's your
Yeah,
calling.
they paid me not to go, but I went anyways.
Mama told me not to come.
I took the money and ran.
Well, I can see why. Anyway, we're going to talk about what I find interesting, and I think you will too. And we've talked about this before privately, but I want to share some things I found out over the last couple of days.
Uh-oh.
I was watching YouTube, as I often do, and I saw Travis Walton on there. Do you remember who Travis is?
Heck no.
You don't?
No.
Travis was the guy here in Arizona that got picked up by the flying craft.
Oh, okay, got you.
And he was missing for 5 days. And people didn't know what happened to him.
That was up in the White Mountains or something, wasn't it?
It was close to the White Mountains in Snowflake.
Okay.
In fact, they were in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. Is that how you say that? Sitgreaves?
Sitgreaves.
Sitgreaves?
That's how I heard on the news and stuff.
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
It
either.
looks like Greaves to
Is it
me.
either or either?
Either?
Either.
You ask the questions that inquiring minds want to know.
Yes.
Anyway, Travis often goes to these UFO conventions and speaks about his experience with this saucer aircraft. And there we've got either rain back or my mic's making noise again.
I think it's raining.
So Travis is telling his story. He's at this UFO convention and he's telling his side of it. Now, I watched the movie and Fire in the Sky, and it's got, what's the guy's name, the actor? D.B. Sweeney. Do you know who he is? Mm-mm. He's got this boyish kind of face, but he plays the main character, Travis. But he says in the movie, all these things happened. They Hollywooded it up. And he said there were things that happened that they didn't include, and there were things that didn't happen that they did include.
Right.
And he said
Typical Hollywood.
Right. And D.B. Sweeney shows up naked after his pickup from the spacecraft, and he said that never happened. He said, I was not naked when they found me. He said, I had clothes on. And
I had a Martian suit on.
And when they had the spacecraft pictured, he said they made it red in color, and he said it was actually an amber or goldish color. Here's some of the things that I thought were interesting. He starts off telling the story, and if you don't know it, I'll kind of briefly cover it here. He and a bunch of other guys worked for the Forest Service, and they were up in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, and their job was to go out and clean up stuff that could catch fire. So they would clean up underbrush, just sticks and stuff, and they'd pile them in one area, and then they'd go back later with trucks and pick them up to get it out of there. So if there was a lightning strike or some sort of fire got started, there wouldn't be as much fuel to get the other things ignited, And they would cut trees down that were dead or anything that had fallen over, and they would take it out of there just to thin it out a little bit. And that's what they did all day long. And they were basically woodsmen. They just were out there to clean things up and chop things down.
I thought they were fishing.
They were not fishing.
Oh.
You're confusing that with the Pascagoula fishermen. Were they in Alabama and they sighted that UFO?
Okay.
They were on a wharf.
I'm sorry, folks. I got her all mixed
Yeah,
up.
that's all right. We should cover that one too. That was a pretty interesting one. But anyway, so Travis is telling the story about them out in this old truck. I don't know what kind it was, but it was a crew cab. And there were 7 guys total, including Travis. So Travis and 6 others. So they get into the forest. They're about ready to go home. It's getting toward dusk, and they get out of there before dark. And while they're driving out, they happen to notice this bright light in the trees. And they're thinking, oh, no, it's a forest fire, because what else could be that high up in the tree and giving light? At first, they thought it might be hunters that had flashlights or spotlights. And then they realized that it was too high up. There's no way that could be a flashlight. So as they're driving out, they come to this clearing where this light is emanating from. And as they round the corner and past the trees, they can see it. And there's no mistaking. It's a craft. And I don't want to say spaceship because we don't know if it's from space, but it's a craft. It's a flying ship, and it's big as life right there in front of him. He said, of course, it was glowing, and he said it did make a noise. You know how a lot of people say that spacecraft or UFOs or what they think is alien craft,
they don't make any noise.
They're completely silent.
Right.
And that's in most cases. But he said this thing was making a noise.
Like this? Or,
no. Or come on. Come over here. No.
Hey, you.
I don't know what it was doing. It was basically a hum, I guess, of some sort. Hello.
And what pitch was it in?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what key or pitch. But so he explains that it was making noise, and he jumped out because he was, all hyped up on testosterone.
He was riding shotgun.
Basically, yeah, he was in one of the door positions. I don't know if he was in the back or the front, but he got out of the truck and he ran over there before the guys could stop him. And they're all yelling at him, "Get out of there! Come over here! Get back in the truck!" And he says, "I don't know why." He said, "About halfway over, I decided it wasn't a very good idea to be running toward this thing." But he said, "I had to get a better look at it." He said by the time he stopped, he was about 110 feet away, as best as he could guess. And then he realized, oh man, I'm out here in the open. This thing, it's the whole field's lighted up, and I'm standing right in front of it, and it's up in the air. And he decided that maybe it wasn't a good idea to be so exposed. So as he's about to take cover and jump behind this only tree, he jumps forward because the tree's actually ahead of him, closer to the craft. And as he jumps forward, he hears this bang. And the guys in the truck later said it sounded like dynamite. It was that loud. But they said a beam came out of the craft and hit him in the chest. And he came up off the ground about 10 or 12 feet and then slammed to the ground real hard, like gravity dropped him back down. And when they say he hit, he kind of bounced, and they said he was lifeless. They knew he was dead. They just knew it. They just felt it. And so, scared to death, they all got back in the truck and took off.
Left him.
And they left him. Well, there was no sense sticking around if he's dead. And later they took a lot of criticism for that. And they said, well, why would you leave and leave him there? And they said, well, he was dead as far as we knew. There was no way he could have survived that. That was their opinion. So they took off, and they get down, I don't know, a few hundred yards down the road, and they start thinking about it. And they thought, well,
we better go back.
Yeah. And they thought, well, before we go back, we knew there were some hunters down here in a truck not too far away, and they had rifles. Let's see if we can get them to use their rifles or borrow them and come back up here. Because they didn't want to go up unarmed. And who could blame them? They didn't know what they were up against. So they drive back rifleless because they couldn't find the hunters.
Oh.
When they get back to the clearing, And it was a little bit tricky. They knew the woods fairly well. They knew that area fairly well.
Fairly well.
Fairly well, my fairy fae?
Uh-huh.
And what's a fairy fae?
That gal that sits over there and with the wings.
Her name's Faye?
Yep.
Okay, I was thinking
She's
something
a
else,
fairy.
but I'm glad it was that. But anyway.
Anyways.
So we get back to the clearing.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Get back to the clearing, and they know where he fell, so they rush over there because the ship is gone.
He was gone too, wasn't
He was gone too. Man, it's like you're psychic.
You ain't kidding. I feel things like that sometimes.
So they leave him because they don't know where he is. They think that he was picked up by the ship, by the craft that was there. And they didn't see it take off. They don't know where it went, but they know that Travis is gone. And by the way, he's written all this down in his own book called The Walton Experience, which is what the movie Fire in the Sky was based on. So if you are curious about it and you like to read, that it might be a good read. The Walton Experience. It's not, the Walton family from the 70s.
Night, John boy.
Night, Grandma. Hey, Grandpa. Well, John. Yes, Grandpa. Never mind. But so one of the things I thought was kind of interesting was that was the same day. This was back in 1973. In fact, I think it was November 5th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll find it in my notes later. But it was the same day that the Edmund Fitzgerald went down in the Great Lakes.
Bet you it was the same spaceship.
Could be. There was rumor that the guys from the Edmund Fitzgerald saw some wacky lights.
That night when they sank?
That night when they sank. I don't know.
I thought there was no survivors on the Edmund Fitzgerald.
I don't know, but I think they radioed for help or something. I don't know what was told, but...
Oh, that'd be interesting, too. Get some research on that. Have Jennifer punch it up next
Jim.
time.
We didn't even say hello to her yet.
Good. Jennifer?
Yes.
There you are.
Okay, I wondered if she was still here running things. Are you still running things?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we didn't want you to think we didn't, want to pay attention to you or anything.
Thank you, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, what about me?
Thank you, Gus.
Okay, that's better. Thank you. You're welcome. But anyways.
Yeah. So the Edmund Fitzgerald went down the same day. You like that song?
Yes, I do.
Gordon Lightfoot?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the longest songs. I used to put that song on when I was a disc jockey so I could go to the bathroom and then come back.
Well, I don't blame you.
People don't think of these things, but disc jockeys are people too.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, some of them are anyway.
You just need a pee bottle.
You do sometimes. Just, put it under the desk and no one knows. Just don't mix that up with your fruit drink. So the sheriff's department somehow get involved, and here's how this happens. So the guys are talking amongst themselves, as they would often do, and they said, we have a problem, because if we report this, we're nutbags. Mm-hmm. If we don't report this, they're going to get us for murder. And think about that.
Well, yeah.
Because who's going to believe that he just vanished or walked off? A guy that's sane and a good worker.
As they say, everybody's guilty until proven innocent.
And yeah, it's only if you work for the federal government. But, just saying. But what I'm getting at is they had a dilemma. They had to really think about what they wanted to do. They knew they had to say something at that point because they didn't want to be brought up on murder charges. So they go into town, into Snowflake, and they tell the sheriff. They call the sheriff. And as you know, up here...
What, they called the sheriff a snowflake?
No, the sheriff wasn't a snowflake. But, but don't start acting like one. So they talk to the sheriff, and they tell him what's going on, and he instantly felt they were guilty of killing him. Mm-hmm. He felt they were making up his story that was so fantastic that just to cover the murder.
Right.
And the deputies felt the same way. And when Travis's two brothers found out, the one brother sided with the workers, the crew. He felt they were telling the truth. He said, they're terribly sincere. He said, there's no way they're lying about this. Something happened. And the other brother felt that, he doesn't believe in that kind of stuff. They had to have killed him. So, whatever you believe can make a difference whether someone is guilty or innocent in this case. So they ended up taking lie detector tests. They all passed with flying colors. And so here we are, guys telling the truth, or apparently telling the truth, and Travis is still gone. And there's no body. And they took the sheriff's department back into where the body was, where they last saw him, and they couldn't find anything. They brought in cadaver dogs to do some sniffing around, and they would find where Travis was, and they would stay right around that area, but they couldn't find any trace of him outside of that spot where he fell.
Or anything else.
Right.
Interesting.
So that was interesting, and cadaver dogs have sensitive noses.
Yes, they do.
And they know what they're looking for, and they're highly trained, and they're not infallible. They make mistakes. But they could tell the dogs were confused because they would stay right there. They found no other trail leaving that area.
Hey, George, find anything over there? Oh, no.
How about you? Nope. So that was kind of interesting. So that was the first fact they came up with. There was, no body. The dogs can't find anything. And the guys are telling the truth according to the, and I wanted to say something here about.
Well, obviously they were telling the truth.
Yes, they were, because Travis is alive.
Right.
And he's alive today. But the dogs, or the tests they took, the lie detector tests, those are not infallible either.
Right.
And it all depends on interpretation, and there are certain key things they look for. And what they look for is changes in heart rhythm, changes in breathing mainly, and blood pressure. Because when you lie, your blood pressure changes, and your heart rate changes, and your breathing accelerates. So they look for those three things to come together at once on the graph, and that's what they measure. So if those three things are present, then you're lying. That's their thought process.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's true that they're lying. I mean, I took a lie detector test once and told the truth, and they said I was lying. And I said, no, sir, I'm not lying. But what they don't tell you is that it's measuring those responses. And if you have a visceral response, and that showed up on the test, but they didn't take that into consideration that was a possibility. They took that as a lie. So I'm just saying, that's why they're not admissible in a court of law.
Right. It's not anymore.
It's not anymore. And you can fake out tests, too, if you're good. If you know how they work, there's a way to fake them out. So now we've got Travis gone, and they can't find him. There's no trace of him. And several days have gone by, and they keep going back and trying to find out where this guy is. And then, of course, the townspeople of Snowflake and the place where the guys live are all coming at him.
Lynch him.
Basically.
Hang him high.
Yeah, they're evil, and they killed him. And they didn't kill him. Well, one other thing I wanted to say about Travis. Travis said that when he approached the ship, or the craft that was in the air, he didn't feel necessarily like they had targeted him to shoot him with a laser beam, or whatever that was they hit him with. He felt that it was more like a discharge, like an electrical discharge that came from the craft. So maybe he got too close and they were charging their batteries up somehow from the earth. He was just speculating. He says, I don't know what it was, but I can't rule that out, and I can't say they were trying to kill me, because he said they probably could have killed me if they wanted to.
Well, they probably did, then they brought him back.
That's what he said later. He says, after I think about this, he said, I ended up on the spaceship, or on the craft, and when I woke up, I was inside, and I was on a table in this big white room, and there wasn't much. It was very austere. There were some shelves, and there were some medical instruments, what it appeared to be medical instruments, sitting on the shelf. And he says, I didn't want to even think about what some of those were for, the way they looked. And he said he didn't remember ever being examined or anything, but he was unconscious. But he woke up in this room with these beings, and at first he said he thought they were medical professionals. He thought they were doctors and nurses, like they had masks on or something, and maybe goggles, and that's why they looked funny. And he said my memory was kind of fuzzy at first. And then when he said I finally got my eyes open and got my bearings, I realized they were looking at me, and they were not human. He said they were anything but human. And they were very short, and they had big eyes, And he said, it scared the living crap out of me.
I don't blame him.
And he said, then I hurt so bad because I knew I'd been hit with this beam. Didn't know that he fell, 10 or 12 feet. But he'd been hit with this beam, and he felt like his ribs were all broken, and his chest hurt when every breath, and all these medical things. And he said, I knew I was in bad shape. And he said, I felt like I was going to die. He said, I really was in pain. But I was so frightened that I got up off that table. And he said, they had something on my chest that was sitting across his chest. And he felt that maybe, on hindsight, that they had actually healed him of death, that he actually had been dead on the ground. They picked him up and somehow fixed him.
Interesting.
And that's what he thinks. That never came out in the film that I remember. And once he got scared, he said he got up off the table and he took off running. They backed off. They went down, I think he said they went down this left passageway. And there were only a couple of passageways off the room he was in. And he turned right to get away from them. And when he walked into the other room, he saw nothing but a chair. And he said, in my opinion, it would look like a captain's chair from the drawings that he showed. And he had some artist do some renderings to show what the inside looked like. And then he said the inside was rounded, but he said he couldn't really tell where the ceiling was because it was all open. It looked like a big glass ceiling, and he could see the stars, and he could see 360 degrees around him.
Wow.
And it was all, he said it might have been a projection from a camera or something, but he could see stars. And then he said, I touched some of the controls on the chair, because they were like hand controls. And he said, when I did, I touched something. He said the whole room spun around like I had changed the view.
Wow.
And he said the stars that were here now I couldn't see them. It's like I had flipped them upside down, and the stars had rolled to the right. And now I'm seeing some other view. And he said it was so disorienting standing in a room when that's all you can see, and that happens. It looked like the room rotated. And he said
Either that or the spaceship rolled.
That could be too. And the inside maintained gravity.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So somehow, while he was in that room, he said that a tall person that looked human walked in that had a space helmet on, as if they needed that to breathe or something. And this person didn't say anything. And he goes, and he's trying to explain to them that these people picked me up. We need to get out of here. He's talking to them like, they're equals. We're both human. Let's get out of here. And eventually, this human being never said a word. And he said he felt like he was one of them now, but he was not as frightened of him because he looked human. And he said that the guy grabbed him around the waist and kind of escorted him out of the spacecraft, or the craft, whatever it was. They walked out into this other room, that's right. And there were other human-like people there.
Humanoids?
Humanoids. And they were tall and thin and attractive people.
Oh, like a European?
I don't know. Could be. It could be like the Nordics they talk about. That's the drawing that I saw of them appeared to be very Nordic, but I think their eyes were brown and not blue. But they were like blondish haired and brown-eyed.
I'll be darned.
So it's then that it was, I think he said he saw other humans in the room, and they were strapped to tables or something, and they put him on a table, and he didn't know if they were,
again,
what they were going to do to him. And they put him on this table, and then they put this like oxygen mask over his face. And when they put that on, he said he passed out. So he said they must have anesthetized him or something. It's whatever was in that oxygen mask. And then when he woke up the second time, he's out on the ground next to the highway. And he said he was warm. He could still feel he was warm, but his shirt was cool because it was touching the ground. So he said, I was lying face down next to the road. And he said, I got up and I realized where I was, and he said I was real close. I was in the town of Snowflake, and he said I kept walking down the road. I think he said it was a mile or two, and he got to this gas station, and the gas station had 3 phone booths, and he said he got into the middle phone booth and picked up the phone and he dialed 0, and he said, I want directory assistant. What did he say? I want to reverse the charges, and he called his home. And then his brother-in-law answered the phone, and the brother-in-law said, who is this? He said, it's Travis. And he says, Travis is dead. You're not Travis. And he goes, I am Travis. And he said, and somehow he convinced him that he was Travis. And he said, I'll have your brother come and get you. Where are you? He tells him, and the brother drives down and picks him up. He said he was so out of it, he couldn't even formulate sentences very well. He was trying to tell him what happened, and he couldn't. And he said it was several days before he could actually tell the brother what happened. And then it was so fantastic, people found it hard to believe. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, very interesting.
So then Travis said that he thought that he would get an exam, and he went in and he didn't specifically say that they found anything wrong with him, but they did mention that they did a brain scan to make sure he didn't have some sort of brain damage. Maybe some folks thought he got hit in the head with a log or something.
Brain damage?
Brain damage, yeah. But he didn't, and they did find some frontal trauma to his brain, and he said he felt that happened when the creatures were staring at him. He felt like they were trying to communicate and trying to make him lay down or make him do something. And he was really uncomfortable with it. He said one of the strangest experiences he ever had, where he was scared to death, and he also felt there was some sort of pressure coming from them mentally. So he thinks that's what happened to his brain, that there was some sort of trauma that way. But he said he never got hit with anything, and the guys were with him the whole time, and they say, he wasn't hit with anything. So, but they said it was some sort of damage that maybe radiation would cause.
Well, I could see that.
And then one of the other things, people ask him, various questions, but they said, well, did you go back and examine the area? And he said, yeah, we have since gone back several times. And he said at first he didn't want to go back because it just felt like trauma. He didn't want to see the place again. But he did go back, and a couple of TV shows, I guess, had him on the show interviewing him. And they examined some of the trees. They didn't want to cut the trees down to examine the rings, but they wanted to core them to see if there was any effect on the trees themselves. And he said that when they did go back, they were expecting to see the trees of a certain height and width because it hadn't been that long since they were there. And when they got there, they at first couldn't find the place because the trees were much bigger than they expected. They shouldn't have been as big as they were.
Wow.
So that was kind of a clue. So they cored some of the trees, and they found out that on the side of the tree that was exposed to the light of the craft, they had grown 36% more than on the other side. And they said that this is indication that there was radiation, because trees will try to grow bigger on that side to protect themselves from the inner damage from radiation.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. So that was another evidence, and it wasn't just one tree; it was all the trees surrounding that area.
Now, did they take a Geiger counter or anything like that?
Good question. They did have a Geiger counter expert come in, and he was from the government. I guess he was a former CIA person or something. I think that was him that he was speaking of. I could be wrong about that. But he said that person came in, checked it out, and there was, background radiation registers as a 1 point something, maybe 1.6 on the Geiger scale. But he said the area where Travis was showing a 3 reading. So it's at least double what it should have been.
Wow.
And then the trees were about the same, about 3. And he said, you know what? Let's examine the hard hats we were using that night. So they brought the hard hats out, and those registered 6 times
Holy mackerel.
normal background radiation. So all the guys had been exposed to that. And he said that what really threw a clue to him was when the guy that was, I think he said that was driving, he had the door open, and on the side that his arm was on, where the radiation, well, where the craft light hit him on the arm, he said that guy ended up with skin cancer on that arm.
I'll be darned.
So more and more little clues.
Now, did this Travis guy ever get skin cancer or cancer? Or
He never
anything?
said that he did. I mean, he never mentioned it. But he did mention the crew member. And then it was discussed, well, why would he make something up? Because they all felt, a lot of the townspeople felt that he made things up. And so did the sheriff, I guess. But he said, why would I put myself through this?
Right.
He said, I had no delusions of grandeur. I didn't want to be a celebrity. I didn't want to go out talking about this stuff. It sounds crazy. And it brings ridicule. Mm-hmm. So 50% of the people believe you and 50 don't, you know. Why would I do that? Why would I want to draw attention to myself like that in a negative way? He said, I just was happy living my life.
Right.
And one of the guys was so upset by it that he changed his name and moved out of Arizona.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and then he has since come back, I guess. Now he's able to talk about it, but he didn't want to talk about it for the longest time.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
It changes your life, something like that.
I bet. Heck yeah.
So the people that did accuse him of being delusional, he said, okay, suppose it is me. Suppose I am mentally ill. Why would 6 other guys have the same experience?
And why would all these trees and everything have radiation in them?
Yeah. He says, it's significant. 3 times normal background radiation is significant. 6 times tells you something different.
Something happened that night. And I could tell you what it was.
I think Travis did tell us what it was.
There you go.
I was telling somebody at work about this, and I told him a little bit of the story, and he said, you know, I've heard part of that story before. He says, do you believe it? I said, I listened to the guy speak for an hour. I think he's telling the truth. And if he's not telling the truth, it's not his fault. He thinks this happened. So if it didn't happen, why would 6 other guys back him up?
Right. I agree. I'm sure there was something that happened.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Put it that way.
I agree with you. Something did happen. So I don't know. There's a lot of these stories out there. The Pascagoula fisherman, I think that was Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I don't remember.
I'm going to do a little more research into that. When I was a teenager, that happened, and I read about it in the newspaper and also in a snippet in a book somewhere.
Yeah, I saw a little program on it, like a half-hour program, you know, like the Erie programs that you can get on the...
Yeah.
But it showed him in a little boat, him and his buddy in a boat, and they saw a light.
And the next thing they're being beamed up into the ship on a beam. But, you know, who wants to make that kind of crap up? I mean, that's... And then they get run out of town on a rail because they're called liars and crazy and all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, after, you know, I believe this stuff before I had my own sighting. But after I've had a couple of sightings. And, you know, we've talked about them. Once you've seen something like that, you kind of doubt yourself. You say, did I really see what I thought I just saw? And it's incredible. That's why your mind doesn't want to accept it.
Right.
But after you've come to terms with that, nobody can tell you that you didn't see that. There's something there. One thing I never discussed, but you and I have talked about privately, not outside the show, down in the valley here, right down from my house.
Down in the valley.
The valley
The
solo.
lights just flickered.
They did. It's a sign that the charging system isn't working real well. But down in the valley, I saw lights. Stop it. I'm going to bring in the big hook.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There was I'm not going to say that V word again.
Down in...
I think this coffee cup will reach over there.
It will.
Hey, my coffee's cold now.
That looks like a heavy one.
Good stuff. Love coffee. But there was this light down there, and I thought it was a lantern or a flashlight. But it seemed to be big, like a car light. It was that big, and I thought, well, that's not... It could be a lantern.
Down in the valley?
Yes.
Where you live?
Here.
Oh, here.
I was looking down over the hill.
Okay, I thought you were talking about...
Down the hill. No, not in Phoenix, no.
Phoenix.
No.
They call the
Phoenix the valley, right. Valley of the Sun.
So you had me all confused.
No, just off the porch here.
Oh, okay.
And I'm looking down amongst the trees. And Heathcliff.
What was that all about?
That was my Red Skelton impersonation. But there was a light down there, and I couldn't determine where it was coming from. And I thought, well, maybe it's a car headlight. Maybe a motorcycle's up there on the hill or something. Because there is a driveway over near there. But I thought, no, it's too far to the right, and there's no road there. And I kept watching it, and it was down through the trees. And, well, okay, then somebody's carrying a lantern or a flashlight, a big beam flashlight. But no, I didn't.
3 o'clock in the morning?
It was about 3 in the morning. And as I'm watching this, and the reason I was up is I was letting the dogs out to go pee because we don't have a dog door up here, and they kept wanting to go outside. And I went, oh, brother, thanks. Can't even get a good night's sleep. And as I'm watching this thing, it's now, about mid-tree height, and the trees aren't terribly tall here, but some of them
they're 10 feet, basically.
Yeah. So I think those trees down there are between 10 and 15, and I see the light come up. And I go, that's not a flashlight, because nobody can fly up into a tree.
Right.
But it didn't go above the treetops. It stayed below the treetops. But it was an amber, not quite orange. I would say it was more on the brighter yellow side, almost white, but very light, bright yellow. And it just moved slowly and back and forth, like it was scanning the trees. What's that?
I don't know.
I showed my wife. I go, hey, honey, because she saw me get up, and so she came outside. She likes to look at the stars. When, I'm awake, I might as well look. So she came out and looked too, and I showed her. I said, do you see that light? I said, watch it. And she goes, yeah, that looks a little weird. That looks a little different. So, and it wasn't big. It was not a craft per se. It looked like it might be the size of a gym ball or a volleyball.
A little sphere.
A little sphere. It didn't approach me or anything.
I wonder
either.
if you took a gun and tried and shoot it.
Yeah, I wonder. Wonder what would happen. But I don't want to shoot at something I don't know what it is. Because what if it is somebody carrying a lantern, or whatever it is, somebody maybe they strung a lantern up in a tree to pull it up so they could see an area. Maybe they're looking for a lost pet or something. I don't know.
Lost bird.
Lost bird up in the tree.
Oh, Tweety.
So.
Yeah, that is strange.
Don't know what it was.
I was telling Billy and Dean about that.
About the orange thing
about that and that.
Yeah. What did they say?
Because he asked, they were up here, Tuesday, because he came out from California to look for property and stuff, but he goes, do you guys ever see UFOs? I said, oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen them. Should have told him, what I saw and what you saw here. He goes, oh, no kidding. He said he's seen them in North Carolina, the orange balls like you have.
And remember that report that I said that I saw online? It was all in North Carolina.
Was it?
Yeah. And it looked exactly like what I saw up here.
Well, see, that's what he said. He said an orange ball was just out there floating around, and his brother or his cousin or something. His brother's cousin.
Twice removed.
Yep.
Yeah, they were...
They's all in the same family.
Just above the trees. And it didn't look very big. It looked like... if I had to guess, it looked like a little bit big, maybe a beach ball. A big beach ball. Not quite as... bigger than a basketball, but it was so far away. It was like... I could see the inside of it, but barely. So the inside was in turmoil, like it was liquidy and rolling around. And,
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, like
that's what I told him.
Yeah, and it was lighted from the inside, and it was about I'm going to say it was probably 3/4 of a mile away, maybe half a mile, if that, and just above the trees. And from that distance, I could cover it with my thumb, so you couldn't.
Well, it
see
wasn't that big.
So it wasn't terribly big.
Right.
But when you think about 3/4 of a mile and you can still see it, and you can barely cover it with your thumb, that's decent sized sphere. I mean, how big is that up close?
Right. Not as big as a beach ball.
Yeah, probably as big as a beach ball.
Busy, busy, busy.
What you said. So, I don't know. Just keep my eyes open. I try to learn as much as I can. I talk to other people. There's a guy named Jeff Willis that's south of my house in Phoenix, and he's down near the White Tank. Well, no, he's not the White Tanks. The Estrella Mountains, which is the southern mountain range.
Well, what did you ask him?
Region.
What did you see, Willis?
No, I haven't talked to him, but I've read his stuff.
Oh.
And I've seen some of his videos online. He spells Willis, Willes.
Instead of an I.
Yeah. So you can check that out. And he's got, I don't know how many hours and hours and hours of video.
Really?
Just white lights, merging together, splitting apart, flying in unison, flying in V's, flying in,
This
around
is all
each other.
video footage he's taken?
Yeah. And he's done it for years, since he was a teenager.
Oh, we darn.
I think he's even spoken at some UFO conferences and whatnot.
Pretty darn wild.
Well, we're not going to solve the mysteries of the planet here, but they certainly are interesting.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And, are they connected with other things like giants and what do you call it? All these.
Does that mean we're leaving?
We're leaving, yes. All these things that have been built by ancient peoples long time ago that are impossible for us to build. Who knows?
Right.
But I think they are related somehow.
I'm sure they are.
So you were going to share something with us in Uncle Garth's almanac.
Yep.
Of
Strange but
and-
true facts.
Strange but true facts. Hit me.
Okay, well, anyways, it says Austria was the first country to use postcards.
Austria.
Austria.
So we have them
It
to
doesn't
blame.
say what year. Yeah.
Postcards and
They're Austrians.
they're Austrians, yeah. I don't know who was the first people to have post offices
Did you
and
know
long lines.
ostriches came from Austria?
No.
No, they didn't.
I'm going to smack you. Your facts are strange, but not true.
But not true.
In that case, anyway. Well, we appreciate your listening. We are going to have more stuff like this. I want to talk about the Pascagoula fishermen. Maybe we'll do that in another show. But in the meantime,
we need to get some information on those babies.
yeah. And we're getting close to Christmas, too, so we want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Yep. Merry Christmas.
And Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, and all that stuff. And stick around next time. We've got another show coming soon to a theater near you.
Next week.
Next week.
I'm Chris.
No, you're not.
Oh.
I'm Chris.
He's Chris, and I'm Garth.
And we are the Bunker Boys.